Well, we're joined with James Edge. He is the new single-member District 4 representative for the Bryan City Council. So, James, thank you so much for coming on Think Brazos.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you inviting me.
So, you are brand new. We were talking a little bit off the air about how you're just getting started with the city politics. You've never been held local office, is that correct?
Correct.
But you have a lot of experience. Over how many years were you working for the former congressman?
Just under 10 years.
Wow.
If I'd have started with him in January, it would have been 10 years exactly.
And what was your position?
I was his district director.
Okay, so you were over all of the, handling all of his local
Correct.
stuff for
Yes.
the district.
We had three offices. We had an office in Waco, we had an office in Bryan, obviously, and we had an office in Pflugerville. And when I first started for Congressman Flores, I worked as a field rep, and shortly thereafter I was promoted to deputy district director and then ultimately district director to oversee the entire district. And our district included eight full counties and 4 partial counties.
Okay.
The largest of which was McLennan County up in the Waco area, and of course second was Bryan College Station.
Got it.
So since the congressman lived in Bryan, we sort of considered this the home office.
Oh, that's why. Okay. But you had to travel around to all of those.
Correct,
different.
yeah.
You probably met a lot of interesting people over those years, huh?
Oh, it was fantastic. I loved the 10 years I spent with Congressman Flores. I loved the people that I met. I loved the connections that I made. I've got lifelong friends, and the sad part is those counties that I don't see as often any longer.
Yeah.
More the rural counties that we keep track of one another on Facebook, but it's about the only time I see them now.
Yeah. So, as far as the local change in leadership for single-member District 4, there was no election. I was going to make a joke about it being a nail biter, but it was it was handled a little bit differently, and that was because. It's really unfortunate, but Flynn Adcock, who we brought on this program not too long ago, passed away. Is that right?
That's right.
And
Very
so you put your name in after that, and here you are today.
Yeah, it was really, really tragic. Flynn was a great guy. He was a great family man. He was a great councilman and a good friend. And I don't know anyone that was expecting. I mean, it was very unexpected. And I had not had designs on serving on the Bryan City Council. I'd thought about it a few years ago, but it's not something I was actively considering. And when Flynn passed, I mean, he and I lived in the same single-member District 4.
Right.
We were not close neighbors, but we were neighbors.
Right.
And I just felt like I appreciate the direction the city of Bryan has been going in. Mm-hmm. And I understand that we've got sort of a perfect storm coming up this November, where we're going to have a lot of turnover on the Bryan Council. And I think it's important that we have as seamless a transition as possible, and that we sort of maintain the direction that we've been going in. And I hope to be a part of that.
So you mentioned about all the turnover. So we're recording this in April. You'll be sworn in early May?
May 17th.
Okay, mid-May. May 17th. November rolls around. Are you gonna have seniority after the election?
The scary thing is I will be the second most senior member on the Bryan Council after the November election.
Wow.
We've got one member of the council that's already announced he's running for mayor. We have another member of the council that's likely to run for mayor. Mm-hmm. And one of those two is likely going to be the next mayor. Mm-hmm. And at that point, I will be the second most senior member of council.
Golly, I haven't been following city politics that long, maybe 5 years. Is this unprecedented in any way, this amount of turnover?
I would have to think so. This is a result of sort of that perfect storm. You've got term limits that were put in place in Bryan a number of years ago, and this is sort of between, you've got one member who's running for county commissioner, you've got 3 that have been term limited off, and like I say, 2 that are running for mayor, and then of course single-member District 4, which was Flynn's, which is open as a result, or was open.
Right.
It's like I say, I don't think anyone ever designed it to turn out this way, and I'm hopeful that, like I say, in the brief period of time I'm going to be able to spend drinking out of a fire hose, learning what a council member does. I'm hopeful that I can be a positive contributor.
Yeah. So I want to go back to your experience working for Congressman Flores and kind of looking at city politics from that lens of the federal to the local. Now you're kind of on the other end. What things do you think you've learned through that experience that's going to inform you on this time around on the city council, and what kind of ideas have you formed that you might want to implement?
Well, I'll tell you, number one, I'm not coming into this with an agenda, and I've made that clear from the very beginning.
Okay.
I want to serve the citizens of Bryan, and I know that may sound a little bit hokey, but in fact, that's one of the things I did learn working for Bill for the last 10 years. Bill saw himself as a public servant, and he looked at us on his staff as not employees, as his employees, as employees of the district, employees of the House of Representatives, basically public servants. And we spent a lot of time during the last 9.5, 10 years in the district answering questions, assisting in any way we could with federal issues and federal agencies. And I sort of see the role I'm going to have with the city in the same light. My goal is to sort of be a conduit between the citizens of Single-Member District 4 and the council and the city itself. I also look at it from the perspective, our great mayor Andrew Nelson likes to say we're two cities, one community, and I believe in that, and I believe that we all, whether we're in Bryan or College Station, or the county, we all have a vested interest in the success of Bryan.
Yeah.
And so I'm hopeful to at least play a part in ensuring that we can maintain the infrastructure that we're going to need in order to grow. Yeah. We're going to have to grow in order to pay for that infrastructure. In addition to that, we have the needs of public safety, police and fire, first responders. So there's a lot of challenges that Bryan faces that our entire community at large face, and I think we just need to look at them from the perspective that the growth is coming, and we need to work towards dealing with it rather than trying to fight it.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the two cities, one community, really county, two cities, one community at this point, because that was one of the things I wanted to talk with you for a little bit, is your views of looking from the outside at especially Bryan and College Station politics and their relations over the last few years. I feel like there have been a few instances where it starts looking like things are breaking down a little bit there as far as the relationship and being able to work together. It sounds like you're on the side of really trying to make sure that this relationship works. But do you have any ideas? Because things like the, I want to say it was an intergovernmental body related to tourism. I forget what the name is. That broke down. It just seems like there's some tension there. Do you have any ideas of how that might be able to be fixed?
Well, I agree with you, and I see the same thing, and I think it's unfortunate. And I'm not going to point fingers at anyone, but I do think that my goal will be to try to, as I worked for Congressman Flores, obviously I had relationships with the mayor and the council of College Station.
Sure.
I had relationships with the county commissioners and the county judge and all the council members in Bryan. Sort of my job was to be friends to everyone. And I don't know why in the world we can't work together. We're going to have areas where we disagree with the city of Bryan or the city of College Station. There's going to be areas where we disagree with the direction that the county commissioners might take us. But we're all in this together, and we're going to be in the same place 5 years, 10 years, 25 years from now. So we're going to have to work together. Yeah. And I have no intention of playing games. I have no intention of getting involved in petty little politics. Hopefully we can avoid all that, and I'd like to think I can play a small part in bringing our communities a little bit closer back together. I feel like we spent a number of years where Bryan and College Station were working very closely together, and I do think we're seeing sort of a separation over the last maybe a couple of years. And I don't think it's a positive thing for the community as a whole, for either Bryan or College Station. Yeah. So I hope that we can all work together, and I'm going to do what I can. Yeah, and it's interesting, again, looking from the perspective of Habitat, where we work, that, we are Bryan College Station Habitat for Humanity. There are businesses, there are organizations all over this community that really do see this as one community with two distinct cities, but it's still one community, and for us, one housing market, one affordable housing market. And so it is something that we care quite a bit about, is that the relations work well and people work well together in that. On a different topic related to affordable housing, there's
there's a situation, not a situation, there is a housing development that's trying to be built across from Blinn. This just as an example that may or may not be in your district, but it's gotten a lot of discussion over the last month or so in council. And there's been some real heated debate and some real pushback from the citizens of this part of the district about whether or not this development that might be geared towards students should be built. How do you balance what you just said earlier about that this community is growing, that it has to grow? How do you balance that with also trying to look out for the interests of your citizens who live in a particular neighborhood who you're representing? To me, that seems like one of the most difficult parts of local government, is how do you balance that between development and the urge to want to fight it?
No, I completely agree, and I do think that's one of the most difficult things we have to deal with. I am vaguely familiar with this project. I've become a little bit more familiar recently. I expect in the next few weeks and months I'm going to become very familiar with it. I absolutely understand the value of private property. That's a core freedom that we have in this country, is the right to own and to control the property that we live on. Now, the problem with that, like you said, it's a balance, because if a developer purchases a piece of property, then they also have the right to do with that property what they ultimately choose to do. So, but I also understand, neighborhoods, we've seen in our sister city, the sort of fight that's taken place over neighborhood integrity. And I absolutely believe that, we as, I live in Wendover East, which is sort of the across Barrack Lane from the Oaks. It's a great single-family neighborhood. I'm like any other person. I don't like to see rent houses popping up. I don't like the idea of a big multifamily development coming in and casting a shadow over our homes. But we do need to try to balance that. We need to balance that with we need to look at, we have Blinn College. Blinn College is a tremendous asset for the city of Bryan. And is it more appropriate for the students of Blinn to be clogging our roads, driving into class every day, or would it be better to have them living more closely to where they're actually going to class? Like I say, all these things need to be considered, and my goal is to very closely listen to the people with a vested interest, both from the side of the neighborhoods as well as the potential developers, Blinn College, and hopefully we can come to some compromise that will, you're never going to make everyone happy, but if you can find a way to address the concerns of the neighborhoods involved, while still ensuring that we continue to sort of move forward and allow the property owners to develop their property as they wish. That would be the ultimate goal. I don't know if it's going to be possible, but we'll certainly work on that.
So you bring up another point that I wanted to discuss with you about transportation, and I'm going to approach it more from representing some of our Habitat homeowners. Over the years, what I've noticed, when we build a subdivision, we have one off of 28th Street that's fairly close to downtown Bryan, more or less within walking distance of that, but it's quite a bit away from the college, the main college, no offense to Blinn, but Texas A&M. And a lot of these Habitat homeowners work for the university. There was something that I saw starting to pop up in the Bryan Business Council regarding some sort of a transportation system between downtown and the university. Apparently there used to be a trolley at one point, and it looks like possibly that this might be up for discussion again. I don't know if it'll go anywhere, but what are your thoughts on that? Because you are are you a part of the
I am currently on the Bryan Business Council.
Yes. So you're probably privy to that. Do you think that's going anywhere?
Well, it's certainly it's an agenda item. It is a priority of the council itself, is to try to explore and develop that. It could be an opportunity to develop more tourism within the downtown Bryan area, as well as, like I say, the fewer cars driving up and down South College, the better. Right. So, and you're right. We used to have a legitimate trolley many years ago, and back in the 80s, I believe it was, they resurrected it, and we had sort of it was the beginnings of the bus system we have now, and each of the buses was actually a trolley, and it's pretty unique concept. Yeah. But I think we're going to have to look at we're going to have to look at creative ways to move people from point A to point B.
Yeah.
And I'll say right now, I'm not advocating for light rail. I'm not advocating for anything like that. I think, frankly, we're going to have to look at some really creative options. When I see the buses driving through town empty,
Right.
I just think to myself, is this really the most efficient? And I'm not, I hope this doesn't make the news, what I'm saying. It's just my personal opinion.
Right.
But I think we need to look at options because getting people where they need to be may not be by running empty buses. There may be other options. There may be some ride-sharing opportunities where we might look at, it might be more efficient, more economic to provide that type of thing. I'm anxious to look at this, but as it relates to the trolley, that is actually one of the priorities of both the Bryan Business Council and I think two of the subcommittees on the council are looking at that.
Okay.
So we're hoping we can find something that might be helpful as far as to promote tourism, but also to get some of the congestion off the roads.
Because one of the things that I've heard, and it's a limited sample, but in talking to some of our homeowners, which are largely low income, that largely have to have their own vehicle, what I've heard when I ask about the bus system and do you ride it, said they would absolutely ride it. Hands down, all of them, most of them have told me this, that they would absolutely ride it if there was real consistency in the way that you see in some of the bigger cities. So it's like this catch-22 almost, where you've got, I would ride it more if I knew I could get to work on time, and then you don't ride it, and so it's empty. And so I guess that's just me pontificating, but I find that a really interesting and tricky dilemma that we're going to need to look at in the future.
Well, I hope that if the cities can play a part in that, I'm hopeful that we can, because I agree with you completely. I think if we had that consistency, if you knew at this stop the bus was going to be here, and we also have to ensure that we've got sufficient coverage, because if you're going to have to walk 3/4 of a mile to get to the bus stop in July, people are just not going to make that option. So I'm hopeful that we can, I've always thought, and this is, like I say, this is just private citizen James Edge, hasn't been sworn in yet. I've always felt like that, the Texas A&M bus system is a well-organized, well-run entity, and I would love to see some cooperation. And, the university and the system has really been good about working with the cities over the last few years. Yeah. And I think it might be something that we can work with them on and expand the routes a little bit, which would benefit the students as well as benefit some of the community members. And if we could find a way to make that work for the system as well as for the cities, I'd be all for looking at that.
Yeah. Okay. With the few minutes that we have left, I did want to go big picture for a minute and look at what your kind of main goals are for Bryan, and where do you see Bryan going? You mentioned that we're growing, that we have to grow. Do you have any specific things that you want to push forward in the coming 4 years once you're sworn in?
Almost four.
Almost four.
Yeah. Well, I don't have specifics as far as I don't have a 6-point plan, but I've lived in Bryan personally since 1974. My father was born in Bryan in 1919. His father was born in Bryan about 148 years ago, and his father came to Bryan at the conclusion of the Civil War. So we've been in this area a very long time. I consider Bryan. Of course, I've lived in Bryan. I've lived in College Station. I've lived in the county, and I consider this just a wonderful place to live. I consider it a very livable community, and it's my hope that we can maintain that. I love the idea of getting a Costco. I love the idea of big shots. I love the idea of, I love when I see new opportunities for us to live, work, and play without having to go elsewhere. But we also have to try to ensure that we don't fall into the trap of long commutes and crime and other things that larger communities have to deal with. I love the idea that you go to the grocery store, you're going to bump into somebody that you know. We're 240,000 people in this county, and yet it's still, for most people, they feel like it's a small town. And I'd love to try to maintain that livability, quality of life. Parks. I'm 100% in favor of exploring new opportunities within the city of Bryan to provide spaces for people to get out of their houses and enjoy the outdoors. Love what we're doing over at Midtown Park. And like I say, the city staff in Bryan is fantastic. I've gotten to know them very well before I ultimately decided to run for office. And it's a bunch of really, really talented people. And, I'm not, as a council member, going to be issuing edicts and directives to staff.
Sure.
I'm going to be asking staff for their advice and recommendations.
Okay.
Obviously, we on the council will be the ones to make those decisions. But like I say, these people are very good, and they're going to be, I think, a great asset for us.
Yeah. And College Station, not to bash them or anything, but as a city, it's becoming less and less affordable, especially for low-income families. And Bryan continues to be seen as the more affordable, what we would call a low-income family can still, in parts of the city, be able to live. But for how much longer? We're seeing, in my opinion, College Station rapidly becoming more like what you're seeing in Austin. And by that, what I mean is that the low-income people are being pushed out of the city limits or out into another city. It's from our perspective, it's a big issue when all different income levels cannot live in a city. Do you see Bryan headed that way, and is there anything we can do and should we do to stop it?
Well, unfortunately, I do see Bryan headed that direction, and there's some of this that's out of our hands. I mean, we have sort of a perfect storm right now. We talked a little bit off camera about some of the challenges that we've been seeing in the last couple of years from a national political perspective. We've got interest rates for the first time. I'm a real estate broker, and I can remember 25 years ago when interest rates were 7.25%, and you were dying to get a 7.25% rate. No one believed we would ever get down to the 1% and 2% interest rates on a mortgage. Now we're seeing them creep back up, and it looks like they're going to go a little bit higher. You have this outrageous valuations that are causing, whether they are legitimate or not, they're causing our property taxes to skyrocket. That's another challenge. That's real, and you have a smaller sample of people that are paying those taxes because we're continuing to, for obvious, ultimately, noble reasons, we're exempting more and more groups, which makes the pool of taxpayers a smaller pool, which makes that even more difficult. So, you've got it's supply and demand, and we're seeing the state legislature made it more difficult to annex property, and as a result, I think we're going to find, in my opinion, find out that was a misguided effort. I think that we're going to see the development, and we're going to see much of the growth, but the problem is that growth is going to be unincorporated, it's going to be unplanned, it's going to be hodgepodge, it's going to be somebody with 5 or 10 acres that just wants to make some money on it, and there won't be as much planning. And while I'm not a big central government guy, I do think that the cities absolutely need to plan for the future. It's how we deal with traffic. It's how we deal with how we get a fire truck from point A to point B. How we get water and sewer. So I'm hopeful that we can, that if we can look at when the economy sort of stabilizes a little bit, hopefully we can begin to start bringing interest rates back down a little bit. Once the economy stabilizes a little bit and we begin to address the supply chain issues that are worldwide that are causing the cost of building to skyrocket. I mean, literally, we're talking about a perfect storm that's causing housing prices to go through the roof. And, when you're looking at, my wife spends all of her time on Zillow. We're not moving anywhere, but she's constantly looking. Yesterday, we're sitting outside, and she's pulling up houses in Bryan that are in perfectly fine neighborhoods, but they're older neighborhoods, and we're looking at $130, $140, $150 a square foot for 45, 50-year-old houses. Just outrageous.
That is.
And I don't know how the young people that are entering the housing market, how they're ultimately going to, young people that are young professionals might not have as much difficulty, but as some of the folks you mentioned, I mean, we've got the City of Bryan is working very closely with Bryan ISD and the CTE Center. We're trying to keep some of our young people here by giving them the occupational talents that they're going to need.
But where do they live?
That's exactly right. And we've seen cases where the cities of Bryan and the cities of College Station are trying to hire first responders.
Yeah.
And those first
Yeah.
responders cannot live within the city limits because there's not
Wow.
available adequate housing.
Wow.
It's a problem, and I think we, like I say, we need to be aware of it. We need to be cognizant of it, and we need to sort of be. We can't be afraid to think outside the box and deal with it if necessary.
Good. Well, is there anything else that you wanted to add, or how can your constituents, when you're sworn in, contact you? Anything you want to add before we end?
Well, I want to add how much I appreciate Habitat for Humanity and what Habitat does. I want to tell you how much I appreciate Habitat Restore. I don't know how many people are familiar with Habitat Restore, but I would tell you that whether you're looking for a grandfather clock, which I saw down a few minutes ago, or whether you're looking for some PVC or some building material, or if you've got additional, you've got something along the side that you're not using, you can donate it. This is the organization. Obviously, the proceeds, I'm assuming, go towards the housing, affordable housing. So, love what Habitat does. I love the mission. I've only had the opportunity to hammer nails on a couple of Habitat houses, but I hope that maybe in the future we can do that a little bit more frequently.
We can get you an invite, definitely.
I'm looking forward to it.
Well, thank you so much. Again, this is James Edge, meeting with Think Brazos and the Habitat for Humanity team. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
It gets a little awkward here when you try to.
That's right.